The story begins in a place of great sorrow, which soon becomes a place of great mystery. In the Christian Bible, the Gospel of John tells us what happened on a Sunday morning, nearly 2,000 years ago. Peter and another disciple ran to the tomb where Jesus had been laid. The stone was rolled away. They went inside, and they saw something strange. The strips of linen that had wrapped his body were lying there, separate from the cloth that had been around his head. Jesus was gone. But he left something behind. This ancient account raises a fascinating question. What happened to those burial cloths? Could one of them have survived through the centuries, holding a secret for us to uncover? This brings us to a quiet cathedral in Turin, Italy. Inside this sacred place, protected from the world, lies one of the most studied and debated artifacts in human history. It is known as the Shroud of Turin. For millions of people, this is not just an old piece of fabric. They believe it is the very linen cloth that wrapped the body of Jesus Christ after his crucifixion. It is kept in a special, climate-controlled case, filled with an inert gas to protect it from decay. It is rarely shown to the public, adding to its profound sense of mystery. Its journey to this modern resting place is a long and complicated story, a path that has been traced through history, art, and faith itself. The Shroud of Turin is a long, rectangular piece of linen cloth, measuring about 14 feet long and 3.5 feet wide. At first glance, it appears to be a simple, yellowish-white sheet of fabric. But when you look closer, something remarkable comes into view. Faintly imprinted on its surface is the full-length image of a man. There is a front view and a back view, as if the cloth had been laid over the front of a body, then folded over the head to cover the back. The man appears to be tall and well-built. His hands are crossed over his lower body. His face is serene, with a beard and long hair. It is a haunting, almost ghostly image that seems to float on the surface of the linen. The story of the Shroud is not just about what we see, but how we see it. For centuries, the image was very difficult to make out clearly. But in 1898, an Italian photographer named Secondo Pia took the first photograph of the Shroud. When he developed the photographic plate, he was stunned by what he saw. The image on the negative was incredibly clear and detailed, like a positive photograph. This meant the image on the Shroud itself acted like a photographic negative. This shocking discovery changed everything. It transformed the Shroud from a simple religious relic into a profound scientific puzzle, one that continues to challenge our understanding of the world. So what exactly does this mysterious image show us? It is the portrait of a man who has suffered a terrible ordeal. The image is not painted or drawn. Instead, it seems to be scorched or imprinted onto the very top fibers of the linen. The details are astonishingly precise. On the man's body we can see marks that align perfectly with the biblical accounts of Jesus' crucifixion. There are wounds on his wrists and feet, consistent with being nailed to a cross. Small, deep wounds circle his head as if from a crown of thorns. His back is covered with more than 100 marks that look like they were made by a Roman whip, a tool used for scourging prisoners. The face of the man on the Shroud is perhaps the most captivating part of the image. It is a face that shows both suffering and peace. One eye is swollen, his nose appears to be broken, and his cheek is bruised. Yet, despite these signs of violence, his expression is one of calm and dignity. It is this face that has been reproduced in countless works of art throughout history, becoming the traditional image of Jesus for many believers. Scientists who have studied the Shroud are amazed by how anatomically correct the image is. It is not the work of a typical artist from the Middle Ages. The details of the body and its wounds show a knowledge of anatomy that was not common at that time. Further examination reveals even more incredible details. On the cloth, there are darker stains that appear to be blood. Scientific tests have confirmed that these stains are, in fact, real human blood. The blood is type AB, which is somewhat rare in the general population but more common in the Middle East. The blood stains are separate from the body image itself. They show patterns of blood flow that would happen on a real human body that had been crucified. For example, the blood from the wrist wounds flowed down the arms at an angle, just as it would on a person hanging from a cross. These details make the image seem incredibly real. The story told by the Shroud is a silent one, but it speaks volumes. It shows a death that was brutal and painful, followed by a burial that was hasty. The man was not washed, which was against Jewish custom but could be explained if the burial had to be done quickly before the Sabbath began. The body was simply wrapped in the linen cloth. For those who believe, This cloth is a snapshot of a sacred moment in time. It is a physical link to the events described in the Gospels. It is a silent witness to the passion, death, and for many, the resurrection of Jesus of Nazareth. Why do so many people believe this cloth is authentic? The evidence comes from many fields, weaving together history, science, and art. Historians have traced the Shroud's journey back through time. We know for sure it was in France in the 1350s, but before that many believe it was a famous cloth known as the Mandy Lion of Edessa, a holy relic that showed the face of Jesus. This cloth was moved to Constantinople in the year 944. Art historians have pointed out that after this date, artistic depictions of Jesus changed dramatically. Artists began to portray him with the same features seen on the Shroud: long hair, a forked beard, and large, solemn eyes. This suggests the Shroud may have been a model for artists for over 1,000 years. The scientific evidence is just as compelling. In the 1970s, a team of scientists called the Shroud of Turin Research Project, or STURP, was given permission to conduct extensive tests on the cloth. They used state-of-the-art equipment to study it for 5 straight days. After years of analyzing the data, they came to a stunning conclusion. They could not explain how the image was made. They found no traces of paint, dyes, or pigments. The image is what they called superficial, meaning it only exists on the very top microfibers of the linen threads. It was not painted on, and it was not scorched by a simple hot object. It remains a scientific mystery. What about the age of the cloth? This is where the story gets complicated. In 1988, a carbon-14 dating test was performed on a small piece of the Shroud. The results suggested the cloth was made between the years 1260 and 1390, during the Middle Ages. This seemed to prove it was a fake. However, many scientists and researchers have since questioned this result. They argue that the sample taken for the test was from a corner of the Shroud that had been repaired in the Middle Ages, with newer cotton fibers woven into the original linen. They also point out that the Shroud survived several fires, which could have contaminated the cloth and skewed the carbon dating results. Other scientific findings continue to support an older origin. Pollen grains found on the Shroud have been identified as coming from plants that are unique to the area around Jerusalem. Some of these plants only bloom in the spring, around the time of the Passover festival when Jesus was crucified. There is also dust on the cloth that matches the specific type of limestone found in ancient tombs in Jerusalem. These tiny pieces of evidence, from pollen to dust, create a geographical and historical fingerprint. They suggest the Shroud was not made in Europe, but that it spent a significant amount of time in the Holy Land. So, what are we to make of this ancient piece of linen? Is it the authentic burial shroud of Jesus Christ, or is it a brilliant medieval creation? The debate continues to this day. Those who doubt its authenticity often point to the 1988 carbon dating test as their primary evidence. They argue that it is the most definitive scientific test performed on the Shroud, and that its results should be accepted. They propose that a clever artist in the Middle Ages must have invented a technique to create the image, a technique so brilliant that we still cannot figure it out today. For them, the Shroud is a masterpiece of art and ingenuity, but not a holy relic. However, for believers and many researchers, the weight of the evidence points in the other direction. They argue that no known artistic or natural process can explain all the unique features of the image. How could a medieval artist create a perfect photographic negative? How could they understand anatomy and blood flow with such precision? How could they imprint an image onto only the top fibers of the cloth? Proponents believe the image was formed by a powerful burst of energy or radiation that came from the body itself. For many, this event is directly linked to the moment of the resurrection, a burst of divine light that seared the image onto the cloth. Ultimately, the Shroud of Turin exists at the intersection of faith and science. It is a mystery that has captivated popes, kings, scientists, and ordinary people for centuries. It asks us profound questions about history, science, and the nature of belief. For many of the world's Christians, the Shroud is more than just an object of study. It is a source of inspiration and devotion. It makes the story of the Gospels feel immediate and real. To look upon the image of the man on the Shroud is to come face to face with a story of incredible suffering and love. It is a reminder of a sacrifice made long ago. Whether it is truly the burial cloth of Jesus or not, the Shroud of Turin holds a powerful meaning. It challenges our minds and touches our hearts. It encourages us to ask big questions and to search for answers, not just in laboratories but within ourselves. It is a silent yet powerful artifact that continues to speak to us across the centuries. It invites us to look deeper, to question what we think we know, and to wonder about the great mysteries that lie just beyond our understanding. And perhaps that is its true purpose.